Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is long overdue. This is not going to be a makeup tutorial. This is actually about brushes. This is going to be brushes 101. So many subscribers have been wanting me to do this video, and I'm finally just getting around to doing it. Mainly because my mom actually got a whole bunch of brushes over the Christmas holiday, and me and my sister were able to pick out different brushes with her and tell her basically make like a little starter kit of brushes for her. And so this video isn't mostly about like brands and stuff like that. It's more so just about explaining to you all the actual brush, because I feel like every brand has the same type of brush. So this is going to be more about the brush style and what it does and why you should get it. This is not about every single brush out there, but this is just about some of the basic brushes and the majority of the brushes that I use in my tutorials and on clients. Let's start off with a foundation brush. This brush right here, I love for foundation. It gives me a flawless finish, and this is actually called, the brand is Crown Brush, and it's in the number C452. The reason why I like it is because it's flat, and the bristles are just very, very dense. So it gives me just the more dense the brush, it's just going to give you more of that flawless finish, and it's going to, with your foundation, it's not going to give you those brush strokes. You definitely don't want that in your foundation. So that's why I love this brush, and you want to make sure it's nice and flat and nice and dense, and that's what I use when I use a brush for foundation. This is the one that I usually go for. When I'm not using a brush for foundation, I love to go to my beauty blender. I have a beauty blender that I usually like to use for my concealer, and then I have another one that I like to use to blend out my foundation. I just started doing that. I like to use this one for my foundation just because it's a little bit more dense. I got this from the drugstore. But for my concealer, this one is super soft, and I believe that it's from, oh my goodness, Beauty Blender? I can't remember. I'm going to have to look it up, and I will put it down below in my description. But this one I actually got from Ulta, and it's just so extremely soft, and it's not as dense, so it blends out my concealer a lot better. So I'll use those two, and I'll dampen them a bit whenever I'm blending out my foundations or my concealer. The next brush that I want to talk about, by the way, I just keep my brushes in just like a little jar like this. This was actually an old candle jar, and so I just recycled it and put it in this. So the next one I want to talk about is a Sigma large shader brush, and this is the E60. It says large shader, but it's very flat, and I like to use this to for like the top right here, underneath the brow, for that brow bone, and I like to use that for like my highlight shade for my brow bone. Sometimes I'll use it on my lid as well. So that's what I usually like to use, like flatter brushes like this. I usually do not, actually I would never use this for the crease. It's just so flat, you wouldn't really be able to shade well. So I usually use this to pack on product for the lid or for the brow bone. Moving on, Sigma medium angled shading brush, the E70. This one right here. Personally, I never use angled shading brushes for my eye. The reason why I'm telling you all about this, I feel like this one is more specific for like what I use. This is my go-to nose contour brush. Like, it is flimsy enough. It took me forever to find a good shader for my nose. And honestly, this is the best contour brush for your nose. It's flimsy enough. It's not gonna pack on tons of product, so it's great for blending. And I am obsessed with this brush. This is the medium angled shading brush E70. Otherwise, if you don't like to contour your nose or anything like that, then I really don't have any personal preference for shading your eye with this brush. I don't really use it, so I don't really have a preference or a reason for why you guys should buy that. This is by EcoTools. This is the Walgreens brush, but I really like this one to pack on lid product, especially whenever I get it nice and damp. Usually, you know, with your shimmery shades, you can wet that with, like, you know, MAC Fix Plus, or just with water. I usually just use water, and then I'll just pack that onto the lid. But the reason why I like it is, as you can see, it's super thin, and it's the more thin and the more bristles are packed like that, it's just going to give you more spread of that product, and it's going to pack on that product a little bit more for you. So that's why I like to use that specific brush for packing product onto the lid. Okay, this is an angled brush, and you know, it's for face, not for the eye. You would essentially use this. Some people use it this way. That's usually what I like to do. Sometimes I'll turn it up whenever I am contouring a bit for the temple area. I love to use this for like this is basically your contour brush. This is what you're going to be doing to add on those darker shades onto your face. Not a bronzing brush, I would say more of a contour brush. I love to use this specifically to contour my forehead, and sometimes I'll use it for my contour. Most of the time I'm using a very thin brush like this for my contour, and you can get something that's similar to this anywhere you look. You know, it probably would have a handle to it or something like that, but I got this a long time ago, and I just love the thinness of this brush for contour. So those are my two contour brushes. This brush here doesn't have a name, it doesn't matter, it's just a powder brush. So whenever you're looking for a powder brush, you don't want it to be super, you know, packed. You don't want to feel like a lot of fullness with the brush, but you want it to be like a medium fullness. You don't want it to be like super, you know what I mean, like packed in. For those bristles, you want them to be nice and spreadable. I like this brush because I also like a powder brush that is large, so it lets me cover a lot of ground, and so I would go for a large brush when you're looking for a powder brush, and something that's not super tight with your bristles or super far apart. Love this brush. Okay, so these brushes right here, the brushes that are, you know, kind of flimsy looking like this, the two-tone brushes, I love them for blush. Actually, my sister doesn't, but I do. I love these for blush or for highlight. I just feel like it gives me enough product and enough pigment. This one here is actually is MAC 130, and I love this brush. This is my go-to blush brush. I'm obsessed. I will not switch. Like, I love this brush for my blush brush. This one here is just a little bit larger, and I don't like a large amount of pigment all at once when I'm doing my highlight. I like to go layer by layer with my highlight, and so that's why I use one that's a little bit not as dense. Do you see, like, one is more dense, which is going to give me more pigment, and that's why I like it for my blush. And this one is less dense, so it's going to give me less product at a time. I hope that makes sense. This one here is going to be the Sigma eyeliner E05. This brush, so I love this for liner because it's like a pencil. Okay, so it just helps me get like a super fine line, and you're gonna use this whenever you're using like a gel pot liner, or maybe even a liquid liner, something like that, or even if you make your own liner, this is gonna help paint you those fine lines. Everybody needs a MAC 217 eyeshadow brush. Okay, not specifically a MAC 217, but a brush that is dense enough but fluffy enough to get that crease and to blend that crease. You don't want your crease brush to be super large, because sometimes you're dealing with darker shades like the black hair that's in my crease. You don't want that, you know, if your brush is really large, it's going to get all the way up to your eyebrow. But you don't want it to be super tiny either. So something that's kind of fluffy, and just that's why I go for the MAC 217. If you can find something that's similar to this, it's kind of rounded out a bit, that's amazing. Like, that is my go-to crease brush. Now this one, as you can see, compared to the MAC 217, this one here is the Sigma tapered blending brush, the E40. Obsessed. And this is like super fluffy. This is what would be a good transition shade for you. Okay, so this one would be great for adding on that transition, something when you're trying to cover a large ground, but you don't want it to be like a lot of pigment at once. That's when you're going to go for this brush first. You would go with this brush first, just basic. You probably use this one first, and then you would go in with your crease brush. I hope that helps. This brush here is your Sigma Pencil E30. Everybody needs a pencil brush. It's just great, especially if you use liner here, if you're using like a oil-based liner. It helps you because you can just smudge things out a little bit better. It also helps whenever you're trying to smoke out that lower lash line, and even sometimes whenever you're trying to just be very careful with the pigment that you're putting onto your eye. Say you're dealing with darker colors, this is just going to be your go-to smudge brush. You can get a pencil brush like this anywhere, but once again, this is the Sigma Pencil E30. Great for blending out those dark colors. Now, I told you all my go-to eyeliner brush, but there's also the Sigma Small Angle E65 brush. So as you can see, this one does have a little bit of product on there, but sometimes I will actually use this for my liner. A lot of people love to use this. I know Jaclyn Hill loves to use an angled brush. Sometimes I will if I'm covering like a lot of ground, but I feel like everybody's different. For me, my pencil brush, it just helps me go at a slower pace, and it gives me a little bit more precision, but I do still love the angled brush. For you, I would tell you to just try both of these out and see which one is better for you. If you guys are dealing with a lot of gel liners or liquid liners, I would tell you guys to try both of these and see which one works for you best, because I started with this one and then I ended up falling in love with this one, and this is the one that worked for me. So those are the two popular liner brushes. Last but not least, we have the MAC 266 SE. This one here, very similar to your angled brush. However, it's different because this is like a two-toned brush, so the bristles are different. This one is going to feel a lot softer, so I actually like to use, and I know a lot of kits actually come with a brush like this. It's what it's good for. A lot of people use it for brows. That's what it's specific for brow. But honestly, you can use these brushes however you want. I like to use this to add eyeshadow super close to that lower lash line. I especially like this one because it is very soft and it does pick up that pigment. Okay, so I hope that this Crash Fast course was able to help you all out with brushes. And I know that it was very quick. I will list a lot of those brushes that I talked about in my description down below. Don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, comment down below, and tell your friends. All right, thank you guys for checking me out, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.